Welcome to She Suite's podcast with your host, Jody Hood. This is a place where She Suite executives share and compare unfiltered realities that our male counterparts will never face. We laugh, we cry, we thrive, and we survive. So today I want to share a personal story, and it's the reason I launched this podcast. Well, let me tell you, it began doing a simple team activity. I asked one of my young employees to lead an icebreaker for me for one of our professional development sessions. Her prompt was this: write down something daring or exciting that you'd love to do this year. And I thought and pondered for a moment, and I decided that I was going to share something, a secret desire that I had for a while. Now, my initial thought was, I'm not doing this because if anybody knows me, even as the leader, icebreakers are horrible for me because I'm an introvert. But you know what? I said, I'll take one for the team. So I said to my team, I said, you know what? Something I've always wanted to do was to do a TED Talk and launch a podcast. So you see, I am always learning and growing and trying to go with the latest trends. But privately, I had two deep fears. The first one was I don't like my voice. How about that? I want to do a podcast, but I hate my voice. Other is I dreaded being on camera. And how can you do a podcast if you're not seen? But ironically, I made the confession. And yes, I knew that these are essentials for what I wanted to do, but I was being totally transparent. So in the meantime, while I'm talking about what I want to do, the exciting thing I want to do this year, overcome my fears, I I was interviewing for a mid-level position. Now, for posterity reasons, really, because who doesn't want to reach the pinnacle of their career and end there? So, mind you, although the position was mid management in title, financially it was just a lateral move, honey, with more work and more responsibility. However, I wanted that dang on job. I did. So after not one, two, three, four, not five, but six
Wow,
grueling,
six.
yeah, six grueling, almost disrespectful interviews, role that I aspired to for years,
Mhm.
I wasn't selected. In their words, Gwenny, who happens to be my guest, I'm going to introduce her in a little bit. In their words, I was benched. I was on the bench. You know, they were trying to find a good fit. Now, needless to say, the disappointment cut deeply. And it cut deeply because I was frustrated. I was angry because I knew my qualifications. I knew my caliber of work. I mean, I have accolades to the wazoo. And some of these people who were interviewing me actually had no real major accomplishments.
Mm.
I also knew they didn't have more experience. They didn't have more passion. Now, they were passionate. They had a lot of experience, true, but they couldn't have more. And nobody could be more dedicated than me. I'm telling you, I'm a loyal employee to my organization. Come to work every day, hardly ever absent, eat, sleep, drink, that job.
That she is, yes.
Oh my goodness. So, I became even more outraged and insulted when one of the interviewers soon left for another position. We went through this long interview, and the next week, she took another job. I thought, what was the point? Obviously, she knew she was gunning for another job when she was interviewing me. And I said, well, this must be a good thing, right? I it won't be an ethical issue because now I can ask her, what went right in the interview, what went wrong. So I reached out to her. Crickets. Do you hear me? I heard nothing. Nothing. And I said to myself, wouldn't another female want to help another female she sweet succeed?
Right, yes.
Only that, the others who were hired for the same positions, a lot of them moved on as well. I was like, where's the loyalty there? Here I am, loyal, want the job, and these people are coming and going like a revolving door. Well, of course, it felt disencouraging and it felt disingenuous. What a gut punch. But Reflection has a way of bringing clarity, and that's going to bring us to the topic for the podcast today. I was journaling, of course, in the journal that I published. Mind you, I've published three. I pondered, I analyzed interview responses. I was in deep reflection. And then I realized something, Quinny. I realized that every promotion that
Mm.
I ever earned hadn't come from an interview. Believe it or not. And I've had many. It came from visibility.
Yeah.
Someone saw the quality of my work, the
Mm.
precision, and the results. And you know what? They sought me out because remember, I'm an introvert. And that's not really a bad thing because Harvard has come out with a study that says introverts make some of the most effective leaders. So I then realized that as an introvert and deep thinker, sometimes my pensive and intentional answers are overshadowed by candidates who are extroverts. You know, extroverts, they can talk a good game. They may not necessarily have what it takes to do the job. They may not necessarily have the passion, but they have that gift for gab. So, in retrospect, I remembered that. I remember my advancements was never because I dominated a room, but because my work spoke for itself. Quiet excellence has, was, and is my signature. But still, Gwenny, the rejection forced me to confront an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the door that closes is the very door God uses to redirect your purpose, which brings us to the podcast.
Absolutely
Sometimes
true.
your no positions you for that yes. So you
Mm.
know what I did, Gwenny? Instead of wallowing in disappointment, I decided to, and this is kind of cliche-ish, transform my pain into purpose. Why not create my own space where
Mm.
I control the narrative? A platform where I could showcase my extraordinary work, my outstanding accomplishments, my knack for coaching and mentoring, leading other leaders to lead successfully, might I say. I could show them better than I could tell them. So what did I do? I decided to pursue this secret desire. I did all of my research. I bought all of my equipment. Thus, I have the podcast. I worked on my voice and I'm still working because sometimes I kind of go to a higher octave, but I'm still improving. And I became more comfortable in front of the camera. So, out of that, this podcast, She Sweets, was born. And you wonder, like, why She Sweets? Well, today, thousands tune in to my conversations, not hundreds. I said thousands, girl.
I
But
know
my
that's right.
conversations, they uplift, they challenge, they empower women aspiring to the C suite. And the C suite happens to be a place where there are very few women. Did you know that? There are
Mm-hmm.
very few women in the C suite that are occupying that space. So, talking about me being relevant and a game changer, I have now a platform that reminds women, young and old, she suites and aspiring she suites, that their voices matter, their perspectives matter, their leadership matters. It empowers them with the bonus to take their rightful seat in the C suite. So that brings me to this little lady right here. You might be saying she looks like my twin, but it happens to be my niece, Gwenyth Easterling. And she is a perfect example of
Mm-hmm.
how a perceived loss can become a path for something greater. My little beautiful, intelligent niece, who's an ambitious, aspiring she sweet right here, began her career right out of college, which was like last year, with one would consider a dream job by all accounts. But all that glitters for one may not be gold for another. What some may perceive as a daring and bold move, she sought out and was hired for a new position with another organization that offered her stronger support, better benefits, and a workplace culture that aligned to her purpose. Now, I had another podcast about intergenerational people in the workplace. So boomers, they want to get a job, stay there for life. And I know these little millennials and Z's, they're like, I can keep it moving.
Yeah, we're out of there
But she was
quick.
out of there. But it was for something better. It repositioned her for a yes from a no. So her story captures the essence of today's message. That simply sometimes a no is making room for a bigger yes. So, Quinny, we're going to start with a few questions, girl. I'm going to let you talk a little bit.
Yeah.
So, here's question number one. Discovering that your first professional position was not really like a good fit for you. Well, for some, it could have been a devastating blow, especially when you're right out of college. Can you share for a moment what it felt like, how you had to process that decision emotionally?
Yeah, so I want to say thank you for having me on the podcast. And I didn't actually know about the story that you told of how you created She Sweets. Very inspiring. But
Yeah.
back to my story, it was definitely a tough moment because, coming out of college, you think your first role was going to be the one. And then, when I stepped into it, I quickly understood that the culture just wasn't a match for who I am and how I work. And it just felt so devastating, after coming from HBCU or a culture, it's just to move away from your hometown, get a good job,
Yeah.
network and just soar. And it just felt like I had failed that assignment. And emotionally, it was just so disappointing. And I've learned to just, try to step outside of my feelings and look at the situation more logically instead of just spiraling out. But it was just really like, why am I feeling this way? And the
Yeah.
answer is just simple. It just was misalignment, which is
Yeah, misalignment. I mean, hey, what they say, S happens. So many people equate loss with failure. So, of course, it had to be a mindset. So, how did you, as a very young woman, shift that mindset to see that this experience is really a redirection rather than a defeat? How did you do that?
Yeah, I just have to really, remind myself that every closed door isn't a loss. And, sometimes losses can just become lessons and protections from things that we don't even know about. And I
Yeah.
just learned that, like, all things work together for the good. Even when you don't see the full picture, it just brings me to, like, Romans 8 and 20,
Oh,
28.
come on with your
You know?
faith, girl. Yes.
I just saw the situation, some things you see it from a different lens and it can look like failure, but I'm just always been a person that has turned, lemons into lemonade and just, things that are broken doesn't mean I don't have the toolbox to fix it and, have a new destiny. And knowing that I also come from a great line of lineage of amazing women in my family, so it's
Yeah,
always
if I must say so myself. So let me tell you this, Gwenny. By all accounts, your new company is a
Mhm.
stronger alignment with your goals. So, in
Yes.
hindsight, do you believe that this transition was a coincidence or was it divine timing? And I think you already answered that.
Yeah, definitely divine timing. Like looking back, it's just so much has just lined up perfectly for it to be so random. Like I wasn't comfortable in my first role, but it wouldn't have opened me up to even having a new opportunity to have growth and feel supported and just being valued in a company. And I'm able to ask better questions and show up for the
Hmm.
role even more. And I encourage listeners to do this too and just understand that things might shift and you might not understand why, but there's always better in the end.
Yeah. Well, guess what? You answered all of these other questions because the one was going to be, what did this lesson teach you? You answered that. And the other was going to be for other young professionals who may be facing the similar detours. What advice would you give them about resilience and the power of perspective? So you touched on that a little bit. So we're going to go to the last question. And that's finally, Gwenny, when you look ahead, how do you plan to approach future challenges differently? Or you might just face them the same. I don't know. Because now you've perceived that L as a W. I'm trying to talk to young folks talk, the loss is W. So you perceive that. So how are you going to move forward? Or what have you learned from this experience?
Yeah, I've learned so much, and not only about myself, but of just about like perspectives and how to look at the bigger picture and understanding that it's okay to pivot. Like life isn't one linear line. Sometimes you go up and down. You may have to go back to your starting point, but in the end, things work out. And just what is this redirecting myself towards and looking at the bigger picture instead of just something so small and such a minor setback for, it could be a major comeback. Who knows, what
Yeah.
life brings.
Yes, I just love your spirit and your ambition. It is, actually it's kind of contagious and I'm a lot older than you and you are really inspiring me right now. But it goes
I'm
back
glad
to
to hear it.
myself,
Mhm.
I really felt devastated about not getting that position, but I know now that it had to propel me to do something that I kind of was apprehensive about and I had to allay some of my fears. And I'm just telling you, with this podcast, the reach is
Yeah,
so
yeah.
amazing. It's worldwide, actually. And I am having the time of my life. So, guess what? We're going to close. So, we already know that sometimes rejection is really redirection. And we know that when one door closes, it might not be the end. It may be the beginning of something that God has ordained. I hope somebody is hearing me out there. Somebody needs to hear this. Sometimes we trust God when it just doesn't make sense. We have to trust him. We can't trace him. What felt like a setback for me and for you, Gwenny, was really God's way of positioning us for something greater. Sometimes that aligns with more closely who we are and our true purpose in life can be fulfilled. You have a new platform. I have a new platform. I'm reaching the masses. You're taking the world by storm. It's just so funny. Sometimes that fits with our vision in our life. And this
Mhm.
podcast for sure fits with mine because I love technology. I love up to date technologies. And as a family, everybody knows I'm into AI, and they're like, "Knock it off, mom! You're
Love the
taking it too
AI.
far." But that's my new thing. But yeah.
But it
So,
keeps you up to
ladies,
date. It's good.
hey, come on. That's it. That's it. Always reinventing myself. So, I hope that my listeners have been inspired by this edition. When a no is really a yes. So, what do I want you to do? I want you to like me on Facebook. I want you to connect with me on LinkedIn. I want you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Of course, I'm on Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, Deezer, whatever your streaming service is. So, what do we want to do? Ladies, we want to keep walking the walk and we want to keep talking the talk because there are not enough of us in the C suite. But Gwen, I am looking forward to you being in that C suite, girl. Yes, ma'am. Corner office,
Yeah.
all the way at the top. Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. And
Mhm.
I have a message for the men in the suite. Men in the suite, hmm, she sweet women, we're coming at you. It's been a good one. Thank you, Gwenny.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. And we are going to go to our outro. It doesn't want to play for me.
Sweets, you better get ready for the sheet sweets. Coming at you with the sheet sweets. It's a podcast for cheese only. Sweets, you better get ready for the sheet sweets. Coming at you with the sheet sweets. It's a podcast with Jody Hood.
All right, Gwenny, that's it.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm going to play
Thanks for
around with
having
it.
me.
I hope it's good. You'll see it tomorrow at 6.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.